This is our second event of this format this year, what we're calling Investor Socials. I kind of want these to feel a little bit more relaxed than some of the more formal events out there. I want engagement. I want to hear from you guys. I want you guys chatting with each other and to just kind of stay in touch with one another and talk about different topics every month. So the last one was very well received and we had really good feedback. So we appreciate that so much. And so we've committed as a group here to try this monthly for the remainder of the year and see how it goes. And if it's valuable for everyone and you're, getting something out of it, then that's all that makes me happy. So I hope you enjoy the evening, and any feedback is, seriously welcomed, and any topics that you might want us to focus on. I don't want this to be long, arduous events. I want them to kind of dial into a topic and chat about it, briefly, half an hour, 40 minutes max, and then we'll have some kind of networking time after that, because I think there's a lot of value to be gained from all of the knowledge in these groups. So that's kind of what you can expect with one of these events. So briefly, just to introduce us, if you haven't, I've met most of you in this room, but if you haven't met me before, my name is Natasha Phipps. I am a investment specialist, realtor, and team leader of Phipps Real Estate Group here in Calgary, Alberta. We are investor focused. That is where my mind is each and every day, all day, every day. And so I live and breathe this every day, and just love seeing what options investing in real estate can bring to someone's life. I know it has saved our family in times that's been needed, and it's also provided us a lot of really great opportunities in life. So I love working with my clients and helping them achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So we are based here in Calgary, of course, and but work with investors from all over the country. And I've got the whole team here this evening. So we're going to hear from a couple of them tonight, and hopefully they'll be popping in maybe as we talk about the market here as well, and can give their thoughts of what it's like out on the ground out there. So yes, hey Drew, yeah, lots of folks from Ontario. It's awesome. The Facebook group is there for you guys. Absolutely, Drew. Use it. Like, ask questions. Yeah, I would love to see more and more people connecting in there. So the Facebook group is Calgary Real Estate Investing. If you're not in that group, we would love to have you there. So what are we going to talk about this evening? We're going to do a quick, just like what's going on in Calgary in June. If you have a specific question of something, let me know. But this is just like a snapshot. We're not diving into the market. We're not doing a half an hour market update, because we're going to talk about secondary suites this evening. But I do want to let you know, of course, if you're out there shopping, what the heck is going on out there and what you can expect. And then from there, we'll move into, I'm going to talk about how we got here with secondary suites, why I've been kind of waving this flag on secondary suites for so long, and kind of what's been happening the last few years and what's upcoming this year. Then the extremely talented Alexandra is going to give us a case study of a recent deal that she did with one of her investors. So I'm excited for her to walk you through that. And then lastly, kind of the last component, if you are looking to buy a secondary suite and do a renovation potentially to legalize a suite, is how the heck do you go about renovating it and what do you need to know? So I'm joined this evening by Michael from Final Cut Creations. He was at our last event. If you were here, you did hear him speak at the last event as well. But we're going to talk kind of what you need to know. We can have some Q&A and some discussion around that as well. And then lastly, we're going to do the quick Kahoot game. Again, we'll do 2 prizes again for the 2 winners of that, the top 2 winners of that. I think last time we did Home Depot gift cards and people seemed happy with that. So we'll do that again, unless you prefer something else. But, Home Depot has everything. So that's always good. Okay, so let's kind of carry on here with what's been going on in June. And as I said, if you have any comments, please put it in the chat. I do want to hear what you guys are thinking. So market in June. We are starting to see those initial slowdown signs. So every week we look at showing activity, and showing activity is like a good precursor indicator to what's coming in terms of transactions and sales, because it takes time for transactions to hit the actual data points. So showing activity is something that we like to see. And the last 4 weeks in a row, we're seeing slight declines week over week. It's not like a tragic story of no showings, but it is definitely going down. I do expect that to continue, especially here in Alberta with our restrictions being lifted. And I feel like everyone and their dog just wants to get out and enjoy their life right now. So I think we're going to continue seeing that a little bit here into the summer. And I really do think for investors this summer, if you're someone who is willing to put in a little bit of work this summer and get to work when other people are probably out on the lake or playing golf, I think you could be probably rewarded, because I think people are going to be distracted. I think actually, realtors to investors are going to be trying to enjoy their summer this year big time. So that could be an opportunity for someone to kind of get out there and find something great in terms of secondary suites or whatever you're looking for, even a primary residence. So showing activity coming down, which is equaling slowing down of sales a little bit in terms of number of transactions, not prices coming down necessarily, but a lowering of number of transactions week over week. That being said, June is still shaping up to be an excellent month in terms of volume, and could very well wrap up being one of June's or Calgary's best June. And one of the girls see whose mics are on and mute them? Drea or someone should be able to see it. It'll light up. Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to show you just to kind of, look at the actual numbers. It's not, a matter of opinion here, but the main two things we look at are like what's happening with listings and what's happening with the actual sales. As we know, it's really the sold data that matters in terms of property values, but it is good to see what's happening with the listing side as well. Mainly my favorite statistic in any market is looking at months of inventory. Someone else is still unmuted. Just mute yourself, please. The months of inventory. So this number, I think we talked about this last time, but tells us what state the market is in. Is it in a buyer's market or a seller's market? And depending if you're buying or selling, you may want a different side of that coin. So where we have seen the most activity, this year, and where it's been really crazy has been the detached market and the attached market, in between 3 to 700,000 even. So this months of inventory is an important one. So this is what the listing data is looking like right now. And we can send you this information if you do want to see it. This is for just this week. So our brokerage does weekly data. And so this was for June 24th. So as you can see, as we've been talking about for a long time, condos, apartment sector, still in a buyer's market with 4.15 months of supply. Typically, the tipping point is like under 3 months, 2 and under for sure is a buyer's market. If you don't know, months of supply is just if nothing else came on the market and transactions stayed where they're at right now, that's how long it would take to sell through the current inventory. So if no other apartments came on the market for sale, it would take 4.15 months for the current inventory to sell through. So that's not a buyer's market at all, or sorry, that's not a seller's market, that's a buyer's market. So if you're buying an apartment, that's a good thing for you. Whereas in the detached market, we're sitting at 1.44, which is very low and competitive, particularly for Calgary. That's pretty low. Moving over to the actual sold data, this is where we want to know, okay, how long are things sitting on the market? What's the average price points? And the, sold to list price ratios here. Essentially, the sales that are happening are really it's really important about pricing. People are not overpaying, and I think that's going to even continue more so through the summer. If you want to sell something right now, you have to be priced accordingly. This is still not a market where you can just like test it out and throw on an extra $50,000 to the price and hopefully it sells. That's not, we are not in that case here. If you're overpriced, you will sit on the market, and you can see those listings out there that are still, doing price reductions and that kind of thing. So the, same thing as we just talked about, the activity really is in the detached market, as we talked about last time, in trends and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but this kind of just gives you an idea of what's going on. Starting to slow down. Prices are still up. We're not seeing any drops, but we're starting to see initial slowdown. So do with that as you will. And I think maybe at the end of the summer, we'll do another kind of larger update going into the fall, because that's when things usually pick up again, particularly for investors. September tends to be very busy, and I would expect that, especially this year, I think it's going to be quite kind of quiet in the summer. So that's what's coming. That's where we're sitting right now. And yeah, I mean, these days on market, I mean, these are a little skewed, of course, too, because last spring, of course, as we all know, the whole world was shut down. So these numbers look quite large, but it's just because it's year over year, and last spring and into summer was quite dead. So, but what I wanted to show you here was that there is price increases even in the condos as well. So prices are coming up in that space as well, which is exciting to see. So don't worry, it's not going to be me talking all night, but I am going to talk quickly about secondary suites and how we got here. I do know we have a lot of experienced investors here, and this will be something you already know, but there is a lot of people in the room who are also just getting started into this. And so particularly this year, it's really important to understand what's going on with secondary suites. My voice is a little raspy. Give me 1 second. I'm going to have a sip of my wine. Okay, so if you've been looking into investment property in Calgary for several years, in 2018, the city of Calgary kind of decided to put their foot down when it comes to secondary suites. Prior to that, secondary suites have been illegal 99% of the time. And that was how it was done. You kind of just turned a blind eye a little bit until something happened to the property. Maybe fire department was called, but there was no like cracking down. There was no one, really trying to do anything about this. So in 2018, they did two things that are important for investors. First of all, why secondary suites are really my safest sort of strategy for Calgary in particular is we have been through, as you all know, the ups and downs here in Calgary, and secondary suites have always worked, whether it's the lowest part of the market, the highest part of the market, and everything in between. The numbers have always worked. As long as you're providing a decent property, to the market, you're a decent landlord, not providing a really rundown property, you have done okay. You have maybe had to get creative sometimes when it comes to vacancies, but you have done okay. You have not seen your property values tank like maybe you have, unfortunately, for some downtown condo markets, and you have been able to weather the storm. So that's what I love about secondary suites. And there is some security in that when it comes to maybe having some fear around investing, or some fear around Calgary as well. So just want to throw that in there. Anyway, back to 2018, the city said two things. One, they were going to give a couple of years for landlords with existing suites. So properties that had suites in a property already built before March of 2018. That would mean anyone with an existing suite could legalize their property and have it registered in the secondary suite registry just by meeting fire code. And we're going to dive into what fire code is later when we talk to Michael, but this is a huge opportunity. And prior to that, if you wanted to do it the right way and be a good landlord and have that legal secondary suite, you had to meet full building code. And that's a very substantial renovation. So the opportunity with secondary suites right now is to buy, or a property you may already own, to buy a property with the intention of legalizing this suite to fire code so that you have a legal secondary suite. At the same time, they introduced what's known now as the suite registry. Anyone can go on there and look at it, and you will know whether a property is legal or not just by going on there. It's all public information. Before that, the city made it very, very challenging to do anything the right way. So that's great. Now there's this registry. Now there's this deadline though. So this deadline is kind of a pending deadline that we've been talking about for years. It was pushed forward because of COVID to the end of this year. So after December 31st, 2021, so into next year, if you want a legal secondary suite, you will no longer have the opportunity to renovate to fire code for properties in the city of Calgary. To go into the registry, you'll have to meet building code after that. And so if you're shopping for properties with secondary suites this year, you may have found it difficult to take advantage of this because there has been a lot of investors trying to do the exact same thing. I do want to point out too, this is for Calgary properties. The surrounding communities and areas have different municipal bylaws and are not undergoing this same program. So this is only within Calgary, because I know there's a lot of people from outside of Calgary and even in the surrounding communities. So this is Calgary. So that's the opportunity. And the difference in a renovation cost of legalizing something to building code versus just fire code is substantial. Like we are talking, you could legalize something to fire code under $5,000 potentially, maybe up to 10,000. But to do a building code reno, you're talking 5-6 times that. So it's quite substantial, and that's the opportunity. It does apply to detached houses or like a half a duplex, like a semi-detached. So if either of those have a secondary suite in them, you can go through the legalization process. The other thing they did at that time was they made secondary suites discretionary use pretty well everywhere. So prior to 2018, you could only put secondary suites into something that had a R2 zoning, RC2, or there was a few other zonings. Beyond that, if you wanted to put a suite in, you had to actually do a land use change to a property, which if you've ever done that, that's like a 6-month process, and you have to go plead your case, and it's quite extensive. So this is much quicker, and the opportunities are now a lot more vast because it really doesn't matter on the zoning. There is more steps. If it's not an R2 zoning, you need to for sure get your development permit. So there is more permitting in place, but it's no longer like an impossibility or having to do the full 6-month long land use rezone. So that's really exciting. But this deadline is coming. So that's where we've been really busy with our clients, is they're taking advantage of this 2 ways. One is to, buy a property, legalize it, renovate it. Great way to employ the BRRRR strategy. Or the city also implemented at that time so that builders could do legal secondary suites in brand new communities as well. So if you had looked back, or we talked 5 years ago, there really wasn't anything in the new construction space, mostly because the city just was not on board. So that's been a huge change, and something I've been a huge advocate for the last 5 years, because not everyone wants to do a renovation, and they shouldn't have to. And those have been just slam dunks for our investors. Either way is a slam dunk. I feel very safe and secure investing in secondary suites. So I was going to see if there's any questions on any of that. Half duplexes. Yeah, brand new half duplexes are 500,000. You're right, Kim. Yeah, or to that is what they cost brand new construction now. Was there any Ian 60? Yeah, exactly. 100% for sure, Ian. The last one we did was closer to 80. So yeah, for sure. It's a big job. Building code is pretty extensive, so we will get into that more. So the main thing to understand is, if you own a suite that is not legal right now, and you're not sure what to do with it, you do need to understand the last kind of point that the city is making is after this deadline approaches, they are going to be a lot more strict with the illegal suites. It's no longer going to be okay for your realtor or me or anyone else to advise you that it is okay to be operating a suite that is not legal. I personally think that there's too much risk there. I do think the city is going to get serious about wanting to collect their tax dollars when it comes to secondary suites here in Calgary. And I also know that they are looking to shut down the illegal ones in hopes of trying to push people towards our downtown and inner city. I do not think that is going to work, but I think that is part of what is happening with the city of Calgary. They're thinking if they can reduce some of these secondary suites in the suburbs where people actually want to live, then that will push them toward the downtown. And I think that's not going to work, but I think that's part of their strategy there. And so they'll be talking about fines, they'll be patrolling Kijiji ads and Facebook ads, and this city is very open about this, that there will be fines coming. And so the last thing you want is to be on the wrong side of this and you know, having them come there and rip out your kitchen and slap you with a big fine, and now you got to put up your tenants somewhere. So take this seriously. This isn't you know, something to ignore, in my opinion. And the great thing is the supply and demand of secondary suites in Calgary. It's not known entirely how many illegal suites there are in Calgary, but tens and tens and tens of thousands of illegal ones, I think we can estimate conservatively. And we're in between 5,000 and 6,000 legal ones right now in Calgary. So there's still plenty of demand to be made up for when we start seeing some of these illegal ones come offline. Sure, that is going to take some time, but the city has been subscribing to MLS data for a very long time. And us as realtors, when we list a property, guess what? We put whether it has a suite or not. And then in more recent years, in the last 5 years or so, we've been stating whether they're legal or illegal. So the city has all of this data. There's no hiding under a rock here. You're going to have to address this. So take it seriously and get on the right side of this. Let me see, Archer. It cost you $40,000 to put in a legal suite in a property list, including 3 1 2 few mistakes ahead. Would be interesting to compare the numbers. Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to see how you did that for 40,000, but it also depends what was already there. And if you did all the GC work yourself, if you did all of the work, like all of the general contracting work yourself and were, you know, yeah, for sure. So that puts you in, you know, control of saving those dollars and cents and go from there. And we will talk more about the actual specifics of the renovations and what you need to know. Sometimes there's questions about that, and I'll bring in the expert for that, Michael, after we do our case study. So the only other thing I want to point out is people ask me where should I do this in Calgary? And there's really no right or wrong answer here. When people ask me where, I ask them, well, number one, what's your budget? And number two, who do you want your tenant or your customer to be? These can work in any quadrant of the city, in really any suburb. It is good to be mindful of, you know, jobs nearby and some sort of growth or activity in the community. Being near any commercial development or transportation improvements are always a bonus. So if you can kind of combine an area that is seeing growth and some sort of improvements, then great. But it's not necessarily necessary. I have clients who will only ever spend $350,000 on a property. And so they're not getting the A-class neighborhoods out there, but they're okay with that. And, you know, they are okay with what comes along managing those properties. So who do you want your customer to be? What's your budget? And you get what you pay for a little bit here. So give that some thought, food for thought. If you have any questions on that or would like ideas of where it would make sense, then we're absolutely open to kind of talking strategy with you and diving deeper into the specifics of where and what you could expect for a community. But I like areas of growth, transportation's improvements, close to some sort of employment driver like the Calgary airport, the Taza development in the south, hospitals, any of those things that are going to be driving people to want to live close to an area is awesome. So that's That's what we want to talk about. Yeah, exactly, Ian. 100%. Depends on the area and the quality of tenants. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Like, I don't want people to think, oh, well, I can only, you know, buy in this area because my friend owns here. This is not a one size fits all answer. So that's something we need to talk further about. But now we are going to talk about, we're going to do a case study. So this is case study. Alexandra Sell is going to go through this with us. And this is with one of our clients that took advantage of this opportunity, and we're going to go through it. We're going to look at what she did to find the property and all the details of it. And I think that'll be super helpful to give you guys an idea of what you can expect if you want to take advantage of this opportunity on the resale side, like if you want to do an actual renovation. The other way to go about this, like I said, is to buy something turnkey, off the shelf, new construction. And we do about half and half of these. So either way, you're providing the right type of inventory back to the market. Okay. So that's really the goal. We want high demand, low supply, and that's where we're at, which is good. The Starbucks rule, 100%. Starbucks, Walmart, all those things. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. And Alex, I'm going to find you and spotlight you. So I know a lot of you know Alex. She's worked with me for quite a few years now, and a rock star realtor and longtime real estate investor. So yeah, she's a huge asset to her clients. And we're going to go through it here. Alex, are you, I'm
ready if you can hear me.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to remove my spotlight, but I'll still be here. And you should be able to start your screen share now.
Okay. So while I'm looking for my screen share, I wanted to introduce myself.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex. I work for Natasha, worked for her for 4 years, and I'm also a real estate investor. And in preparation for this, I want to share with you a recent purchase that I did. I think you can see my screen right now. Okay, so full disclosure, this is not a newbie investor. He has several properties which he has already legalized in the past. So that whole buy and hold strategy with intention to legalize was always on the radar. And this is from last month, which means that we were right in the thick and thin of multiple offers on every property. This one went really quickly. It's a property in Somerset, and I'm going to really dive into it, but I just want you to take a look. It's in Somerset, 4 bedrooms, 2 up, 2 down, and in the back, as you can see, it's a full walkout. And I typically would advocate that people look at maybe 3 bedrooms on the main level and 1 or 2 in the basement. But in this instance, this property just had so much going for it, and you don't always have to have 3 bedrooms because of the type of tenant profile, which I will talk about in a second. So the address is 42 Summercrest Circle. It's in Somerset. Like I mentioned, 2 bedrooms up, and the way it's set up is it's 2 bathrooms on the main as well. So you have a primary bedroom with a bathroom, as well as another really large bedroom with another bathroom. You'll see through the picture why this property just was checking all the boxes. Good square footage. I recommend looking at anything over 1,000 square feet, and this one was meeting all of the requirements. Double attached garage, regular size, nothing oversized. However, as you can see on a very front picture, it has a ton of street parking as well, and there's a back alley. So your tenants will never run out of parking space, and your neighbors will not be complaining. So
yes,
I wanted to include some pictures. I don't know how well you can see them, but I wanted to point out a few features. Hardwood everywhere on the main floor. It's fantastic. It's not your white plank oak that everybody wants, but you know what? This has never been sanded. It's beautiful. It's in all the bedrooms. It's in the kitchen. It's very easy to maintain. Bright, big balcony, really functional. And look at the size of the bedroom. And this is on the top right is an ensuite, and there's additional 3-piece bathroom. And the bottom line is what the basement looks like. My client's planning to do a little bit of renovation, but it's honestly lipstick on a pig, as you would say, or rather cosmetic. He's repainting the whole place. He's gonna change all the flooring for uniform luxury vinyl. But look at the kitchen. It's all set up, and there's 2 bedrooms, and they're both large. So I just wanted to throw some pictures for context when I'm talking about it. Okay, one of the reasons why we jumped on this and other people maybe overlooked it is because my client already owns a property in Somerset, and it's performing exceptionally, and he's cash flowing, and he knows the area, and he knows the tenant profile. But Somerset is awesome. It's very landlord friendly, and rents are high. There's a multitude of schools. There's about 10 different schools, public, Christian, and charter. It's really close to both Shaughnessy, Somerset, and a little bit farther, Anderson, LRT stations. And then, of course, now with the new Stony Trail extension and the Taza development and the new Costco, it's been a game changer to get in and out of that community. It's honestly 15 minutes anywhere you want to go. But there's also 22X, McLeod Trail, you can get on Glenmore, easy access. And of course, a wide range of amenities in the South. If you've never been there, or if you're from out of town, we've got Costco, we've got Superstore, Walmart's, all the amenities you might need, ton of restaurants, gyms. You won't run out of things to do. And also it's surrounded by Fish Creek Park as well as Spruce Meadows. So it's really fantastic, family-oriented neighborhood. So that's why we were drawn to that. And that was one of the criteria that he was looking for. Oh, more on a location I want to point out. So this is, I guess, for maybe newer investors, if you're looking, and this is kind of to make a point to what Natasha was talking about, where to buy. So when I'm helping my clients analyze what makes a good rental property, we kind of look at the neighborhood based on his budget. So I always look at what is your demographics, who's going to be renting, who will be your customers, what age, and some people are totally okay with maybe younger people, maybe university students, but then of course you have a higher turnover. My client wanted families, more established people who, because he doesn't want a lot of turnover, right? So he's hoping to get somebody in there for longer time. Also, local economy, jobs. So in the South, you have a lot of blue collar workers, a lot of immigrants tend to live there. In fact, I used to live there as well when I first moved to Canada. So I know that area really well. And my very first job actually was at that very superstore that's there. So also average home appreciation. So for my client, because he knows that area so well, because he's bought, his first primary residence was in Somerset. It was a no-brainer, but he was open to other areas. But this is something that you might want to ask your realtor, like how have homes traditionally done in this area? Is there lots of resale? Are they appreciating? You almost always will appreciate over time, of course, but average rent as well. This particular investor knows his numbers really well, but that's definitely something you want to consider when you're buying. And of course, is the neighborhood safe? The South tends to be very safe, but as everywhere else in the big city, you do get some break-ins from time to time. So that's pretty much everywhere. Okay. Why does property make such good sense is what everybody wants to know. Math doesn't lie. Here's some numbers. So I've negotiated a price down. This is not the list price, but this is what we bought it for, $440. And my client, so typically investors will put down 20%. My client put down 35%, which was $154,000. Legal fees were about $1,300. Again, they're closer to $1,500, but because he keeps using the same lawyer that's on his team, he was able to negotiate a little bit of a discount. We definitely paid for inspection, and I'll talk later, but you never want to skip that because you want to know what you cannot see with a naked eye, because that whatever you don't uncover in an inspection will become part of your operating expenses on the other side. So The loan to value is 65%, of course, based on what he put down. As an investor, he secured a rate of 2.3 with TD. And he chose 30 years for amortization. And I think Natasha talked about that in a previous session. So therefore, his monthly mortgage payments are $1,363. And then on the other side, if you notice what this property has for expenses. So because he's managing all of these properties himself, property management is zero. His tax is about $220 per month. Insurance, it all went up after last year's recent hailstorm. So it's anywhere between 85 to 95 per month right now. But a good tip is that they don't get a lot of hail in the south. So that was, again, what was driving him into that particular quadrant. Vacancy about 2% or 56 per month, and same for repairs and maintenance. And then utilities tend to pay, the tenants pay the utilities, but we still wanted to know what they are. So I asked the listing agent to see several months worth of utilities so that we can include that into our spreadsheet. So the total expenses are $817. Now, rental income, what I put down here is what we anticipated. He has now secured a tenant, and he's getting $150 more than what I've anticipated and predicted, but that's a good problem to have. So for main floor, I quoted him $1,350, plus the way he likes to set up his utilities is he puts them in his name, and then he just charges a fixed amount to the tenant. So $350 for the main floor, and he usually accounts for about $100 for the basement. So the total rental income for this property is $2,800 per month on paper, but it's $150 more.
Hey.
So that's good. So he's happy, and that makes it your cash flow $620 or plus $150. So that will be slightly higher. So he's happy. He didn't wait very long. We only looked at 3 properties, but again, we're talking about sophisticated investors who he knew what he was doing and what he was looking for. So he was, we had all the ducks in a row, pre-approval in hand, and really knowing what we're looking for. So that made my job a lot easier. Still, we looked at 3-4 properties and wrote on this one. And then what I want to talk about, and I think, Michael, you're going to maybe elaborate on this, but this is what we were looking for this particular property in terms of highest and best use, because he knew that he has until December 2021 to legalize. And so we were looking for something that is almost like 95% complete. So in this case, it already had a suite and it has a full walkout. So when you go in that property, it's almost 1,000 square feet, bright, and it doesn't feel like your typical grungy basement. Like, it was fabulous. So his plans to legalize included installing all the CO2 and smoke detectors in both bedrooms and a common area. And they have to talk to the unit upstairs. So that's what the electrician is for. Furnace room is going to be installed as opposed to drywalling the furnace room, and under the stairs is already done. So that was excellent surprise. And then they usually, so the door leading from the stairs down into the suite is hollow core. And I've had that happen to me. So I already put this on a list, but chances are that they're gonna ask us not to change it, but they will grandfather that and just make sure that there's a closer on it to act as a smoke barrier, if that makes sense. And another highest and best use that we looked at is, what is your ideal tenant who's going to be renting? So the tenant demographic, the median total household is about 99,000 and up. It's mostly families. It's about 20 to 60 is the predominant demographics. And look at this percent of immigrants, it's 46%. And that's good. I find, as an immigrant myself, is that when you have newcomers into Canada, they're very driven. They are trying to make life better for themselves and their families and build a legacy. So they're going to, first of all, try to find a job. Most of them work more than one jobs. They're really hardworking. And that's exactly what my client ended up. He got a wonderful Filipino family who is sponsoring family from the Philippines. So they end up renting the basement as well. So it's honestly win-win. My client's happy. The tenants are wonderful and really appreciative. He's still doing renovation on the bottom though, because he has the time, but the upstairs has been repainted. And I wanted to throw some numbers at his actual costs. And this is real time, so it's still happening. The application has been put through, but we're still talking to the city inspectors and so on. So this is my due diligence that I was doing for him. First of all, be really familiar, like I mentioned, with your community, and know the kind of tenant profile, and also know what you need to set your rents at. Because when you choose your rent and your community, you kind of choose your competition as well. In this example, the revenue really exceeded the cost. So, you know, house inspection in terms of unforeseen expenses, such as are the appliances in good working order, or are we gonna needing to change them within the first 2 years, that kind of stuff. What does the roof look like? Everything was really, really excellent. For the repairs, like I mentioned, the paint throughout. So on our team, we have a painter who charges $1.50 per square foot, and that means including the primer, which is really good. I think the regular cost is $1.75, but that's a question for Michael. Anyway, so to paint that whole 2,000 square foot, his bill is $3,067, both top and bottom. Basement floor, he is choosing to go with luxury vinyl, which he picked up at $3 per square foot. And then electrician is still there, still upgrading the CO2 and smoke detectors. And this is only an estimated cost. We haven't gotten the final bill yet, so I don't know. And of course, in your deal analysis, you want to put in repairs and maintenance and estimate it. And that's why it's good to have a guy like Michael on your team who can come in and give you a more actual cost. I'm not sure if there's any questions. I kind of rushed through it, but I'm going to stop sharing this.
No, that was great, Alex. Amazing job. I wrote down a couple things to kind of point out that Alex mentioned there that is really important to notice. So first things first is this investor chose to put more than 20% down. And you don't have to do that by any means, but this is one of the reasons, one of the first things I ask people is like, what are you trying to do with this investment? And I don't actually know this client in particular, but often if you're trying to speed up your retirement, or you're trying to get to a certain number by a certain time, if you can put more money down, then you absolutely can. You're reducing your leverage, of course, with the bank, but that doesn't mean that that's a no-go. This was a sophisticated investor. He knew what he was doing. That is a strategic decision that he made. So I just wanted to point that out. And the 30-year amortization, of course, to, you know, really increase the cash flow. So I think that was super smart, depending on obviously his goals, but there's not a one size fits all answer, I guess, is what I like to kind of tell people too, right? And his rate was a little bit higher than the lowest posted rate you'll see out there. And that's okay. You know, this thing still makes really good sense. So when you get to a certain point, you're not going to get those A lender rates out there, and B lender rates even right now are incredibly good. So that was really well done, Alex. Does anyone have any questions about that though? Is the investor going to refinance afterwards? You know?
Most likely, but he's the more properties you own, the more difficult it becomes to acquire another one. And so this is why he had to put more money down as well. And because he's self-managing it as well, I think we don't know yet. We don't know what he decides to do, but typically every 5 years, that's what we do anyways, refinance and take that money and put it down for another property and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, 100%. Great job. That's exciting. And oh, that's the other thing I had circled was that extra $150. Typically on any of our pro formas, we're not trying to estimate being like, we've hit the jackpot here. We really want to estimate conservatively. If you are not happy with those numbers being super conservative, and big props to Alex for doing like her job, doing the due diligence for the client and estimating conservatively. It's really easy when you're excited about something to start getting creative. You're like, oh, I can easily get an extra $200, or oh, that renovation will only cost me, $5,000 instead of 20 if I do it myself. So be conservative with your numbers, always have that buffer room. And if you do better on your rents, then amazing. But if you can't live with it being conservative, then it's probably maybe not in your comfort zone, or, aligning with whatever it is that you're trying to do. So.
And of course, sorry, don't
Yeah.
mean to interject, but you're 100% right. It also depends. Like when we started looking at properties in that area, it was, the height of the market, but the rental market hasn't actually caught up yet. As of last month, the rentals, especially for detached homes, I find has really increased. And so good for him. He did all the marketing and, interviewing of the tenants and his own due diligence by himself. So, this is kind of what I could see as an average, but I didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver, It's better to go the other way around, and it worked out for him. And of course, he signed a fixed term lease, and that just happened to work out for now.
Yeah. That's really well done. Starting with who the customer wants to be, like from the very top, right? Starting with the strategy and then going down from there. That's like exactly how we want it to go. And so, yeah, that's a really exciting one. Well, bravo. Well done, Alex.
Thank
I hope
you.
you guys found that helpful. I did get a couple direct messages about like, are we going to share this? And we are recording this. We will edit the recording, just the beginning and ending, and we'll send out the recording so everyone can rewatch it in case you missed anything tonight. So we will redo it. I'm also getting a note. Oh yes, Drea just put a link in the chat there if you need to leave early or would like to reach out to us at all. There's a little Google form there. If you could fill that out, that would be wonderful. But if there's no more questions for Alex, I know she does have to run here and won't be hanging around for the networking. So if there's any specific questions for her that you want answered now, let's put them in the chat and get them done. And then if not, we will be moving on to the nitty gritty of how you do this, talking with Michael. So I think we got them all. This is amazing. Great job. Awesome. Okay. Wonderful. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Alex, I appreciate you so much. Very good job. And yeah, if anyone, of course, wants to review those numbers, we're going to send them out to you so you can take a peek. And this is something our team, this is a strategy we help people do all the time. So if you're interested in this, absolutely let us know and we'll get you booked into a strategy call. Okay, so we are going to move into talking with Michael. Let me find you. There you are. Okay, I'm going to unmute you, Alex. I'm going to unpin you, remove spotlight. There you are. Okay. And add you, Michael. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, doing good. Thanks for inviting me this evening. I mean, I guess I want to be a part of it monthly, so
yeah,
I'm excited to share.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. If you were at the last event, maybe you got to hear Mike and I chatting a little bit, but we've kind of been, I don't know, running into each other for many years now at plenty of investment groups and meetings and stuff. And I know you know your stuff. You are a real estate investor yourself, but and a terrific contractor. And I just maybe give a little background on yourself for those of us here who don't know you, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Sure. My name is Michael Fedun, and I'm the owner-operator of Final Cut Creations. We are primarily a home renovation company, and we got into doing specializing in secondary suites because I was interested in being a real estate investor, and so I purchased the property myself and kind of fell into developing a basement suite. And well, I guess I was like everybody else, just didn't really know how to invest in the stock market and didn't want to learn, and didn't, thought that I'd probably be better off, I don't know, doing real estate. And being a contractor, I felt like I had an ability to be able to add a little bit of my own forced equity by building suites myself. And the first one worked out and cash flowed, and started reading books and starting, getting involved in different real estate investor groups. And then my business started to kind of move in a direction of attracting other real estate investors that wanted to build suites because of the experience that I had. And then I started purchasing more properties and suiting them, and just started gaining more and more experience that way. So that's kind of how it all kind of started.
And something I should have mentioned too, I don't know if this is the case for you, but people often end up in secondary suites because that's where the analysis kind of takes them. Like, so often people, they're just getting started. They're like, I'm going to buy a townhouse, or I'm going to buy a condo, or I'm just going to buy a house. And then they come to us, they go, nothing cash flows. They go, nothing makes sense here. And then it doesn't really work how you want it to work unless you look at secondary suites. So that's why they're so important, right? I mean, it reduces risk because you have two tenants. If you have vacancy, hopefully you still have something coming in, but the numbers, like you said, it cash flow, right? That's really what it's all about. So
absolutely. When I looked at, investing in real estate, I wanted to, see what it was like if I had a condo, or if I just purchased a single family detached, or a duplex, and thought, what if I just purchased that and rented it out? And every time I ran the numbers, it's like, well, it maybe just covered the expense of owning the property, and maybe I might get caught where I was going to have to do a repair that would then force me to put more money into it than what I was actually bringing in revenue. And so I thought the only real strategic way of doing it is to suite the property. And it also gives you, what I've noticed anyway, is that it gives you a competitive edge to other people that are trying to rent a single family detached and cover all of their expenses. I could actually rent out a single family detached for less than somebody else who's trying to rent out the whole house. And that attracts a certain type of tenant, and somebody who doesn't care if they have the use of the basement, but needs 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and because they have 2 kids and they don't have the income to pay for a whole house on their own. And so it works in many different ways. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it works really well. Now, a couple things. So we kind of talked about this briefly, but to dive into more detail, I really want people to understand the difference. First of all, rewind. I want to mention one thing before we go there. If your contractor or your realtor or someone else is telling you it's not important to go down this road, like, just run. Because the problem is if you ignore this or take that advice, it's going to bite you at some point. And that's already happening to people, unfortunately, that I'm trying to, help along the way. So if you're being advised that, like, and this isn't someone who is a specialist in secondary suites like Michael is, please find someone who is a specialist in this, because this is not something that you can just call anyone up and they will have a clue what you're talking about. So find the specialist is really point number one, and take this seriously. So let's talk about the difference. So after the end of this year, any new suites will have to meet building code. Right now, if you have an existing suite prior to March of 2018, you can meet fire code. Can you tell us, as a contractor, from a, you know, project scope and cost and all that kind of stuff, what the difference really means to someone who has never gone down either path?
Sure. So fire code is strictly based on safety, and building code is going to be safety and some comfort elements in there, like living standards are improved based on building code. And so fire, they're really concerned with, well, they're really concerned with fire. They want to make sure that you know, so fire code basically is making sure that the building burns long enough that a firefighter can get to the occupants and get them out before the building collapses, is basically fire code. And then also they want to minimize smoke transfer between suites. So if the fire starts in the basement, they want to make sure that it doesn't transfer to the main house, because, you know, smoke often is what prevents you from getting out of the house. So they want to, you know, minimize smoke transferring between units. And so that's the goal, really, I think, of the city, is to just make sure that, you know, they could extend the time that somebody can get out of either unit, and also firefighters can get in to rescue anybody. Then building code is going to extend beyond that, and cost definitely increases when we go to building code requirements. And so, you know, and then there's a multitude of elements there, and we talk about money, and of course that's the primary interest of any investor, is going to be, well, you know, I want to invest the least amount, I want to get the biggest bang for my buck. And so meeting fire code is going to be building specific, when I mean property specific. So to say, well, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to bring it to fire code for any property isn't really realistic. I have to go and take a look and see what's existing, and then say, these are the things that you need. But I would say that, you know, you could be ranging anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on what's needed. So the kind of things that are needed to just meet fire code are things like the ceiling needs to be drywalled. The mechanical room minimum needs a sprinkler system. I mean, that Calgary's doing that, but the surrounding areas, you know, aren't doing that. But Calgary's saying we can use a sprinkler in the mechanical room, and you need to have smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector. Smoke detector in every bedroom, and a carbon monoxide detector within 3 meters of a room. You need to have egress window in each bedroom. So,
well, who cares? I'm not having Wi-Fi running all night. Absolutely not.
got their microphone on. So you need to have an egress window. So these are the kind of these are the big things that meet the fire code. You need to have, I do believe that you need to have a solid core door. It doesn't need to be fire rated, but it needs to be solid core, and it needs to have a self-closure mechanism of some kind. So whether it's a device that's attached to the door and to the casing, or it's just a hinge, which is more typical because it's just more aesthetically pleasing, that closes the door automatically, is acceptable. But I do believe you need to have a solid core door as part of fire code. And so, yeah, sometimes it can be, you know, very little, like you don't really need to, you know, put in a lot.
Well, the example Alex showed, right? I mean, like if you have a property that has no egress windows and no separate entrance yet, then yeah, that's going to cost you a lot more than if all that stuff is already there, where you have a walkout basement or a side entry there. So I agree with you. Like, and when we're as realtors out shopping, we're trying to, well, be realistic as we can without being contractors ourselves, but saying, okay, like these windows are not egress, so you're going to have to do the windows. And some people are like, no, I absolutely won't do windows. So then we look at the listings and go, okay, we can tell those aren't egress windows. Like, don't even bother going to look at that one if that's outside of your comfort level.
Yeah.
There was a good question here about, where was it? Oh, Robin said, aren't you going to have a happier tenant if your reno is to building code? I'll kind of give my thoughts on that, and then maybe you can as well. So potentially, yes. And the property could potentially, be worth more as well. But it depends what's in there, right? Like if there's some very nice secondary suites out there that are not to building code, like they could still have their own heat source potentially, but they haven't done the fire code items that Michael was talking about. And it could be a very few small things to bring them up to fire code. But the largest difference from like a tenant's perspective from building code to fire code that we talk about anyway as realtors is that affects a tenant's quality of life is usually their own heat control and comfort level when it comes to their own space and temperature. So if it's an existing property that wasn't built for a secondary suite, it's unlikely that it has its own heat control or heat source in the basement suite. And so sometimes that's a consideration. You may want to think about that and what that would do. Maybe you're going to still add a secondary heat source for them, even if you're only going to fire code in terms of renovation. But in some cases, like it wouldn't make sense to rip everything out and start over again just to meet building code and spend that extra, $50,000. Usually it doesn't make sense. You can add those comfort items without having to go to the full building code, but love to hear what you think, Michael.
Sure. Yeah. So there actually isn't really like a very big difference between building code and fire code. Like I think the major one is going to be the independent heat source. So building code states that the two units cannot share air. So no air can be combined, whether it's within the return air or supply air. So that adds a big expense. You're talking $6,000-$7,000 to add another furnace, and maybe $3,000 to $4,000 if you go with baseboard heat, and then an HRV. And so for the people that don't know HRV, and that's a unit that's going to help introduce fresh air into the unit, which is building code as well. So building code, you have to add fresh air and you have to exhaust stale air. So what you do is you interconnect the HRV unit with your bath fan. And so you can turn the fan on and it will introduce fresh air and it'll exhaust stale air. And with the baseboard heat, then you're running electricity through, which I think could potentially, when I've run the numbers, add up probably over time, maybe a 5-year span, that your electrical bill will catch up with the cost of what it would be to add a second furnace. Now, if you don't have room to add a second furnace, then maybe baseboard heat is really your only option. And so I think like there's like maybe the argument is out a little bit on what's the better method. Sometimes adding baseboard heat just really isn't an option because you've got to run all the wiring to do that. And so are you going to like, tear out the drywall, and maybe even if you do add a second furnace, now you're tearing down the ceiling. But if you have a dropped ceiling, like if you've got a suspended ceiling with ceiling tiles, that doesn't meet fire code. You have to have a drywalled ceiling. So you're just pulling that down, adding a second furnace, running new ducting, and now you've got forced air in the basement. I think sharing a furnace between units creates a challenge when it comes to sound transfer. So you could have shorter term tenancy I've noticed that myself. So when I built my first rental property, we installed what's called a dual zone furnace, and this is in Cochrane, and this is allowed. They said that you had to have independent heat control, and a dual zone furnace allows that. So there's like 2 zones. One is for the basement, one is for the main floor, second floor, and they did have independent heat control, but it shares air. It still does, the dual zone furnace. And what they also do is they also share the cold air return, and that allows sound transfer by doing that. And so one of the problems I've found with that is that you can hear on the main floor and vice versa, some sound transfer as a result. And the same thing would go if you're just doing minimum fire code, trying to meet fire code in a current duplex, single family detached, where you just have a shared furnace. You're going to have sound transfer within the ducts, and so you may find that you're not going to have as a tenant that's going to want to stay as long because of sound transfer. That's kind of my opinion of that. I've found that with the properties that I have where there's separate furnaces, and we go and we like insulate the floor space above, so all the joists, the joist cavity is all insulated. We double drywall the ceiling, separate furnaces for both units. There's like no complaints about sound. Like they don't hear each other. They hear maybe somebody coming and going, closing a door or something like that. But like they're not hearing conversation. They're not hearing TVs. They're not hearing music. So
for sure. And I mean, and part of this as a landlord too is like, when you choose your tenants, try to choose them on similar schedules as well. So there is some like preventive things you can do. So I have experienced people complain both of them potentially, but definitely I agree with you. Less sound in ones built to building code or with the added soundproofing. Someone did ask up ahead or up above, just because something is built brand new or built to building code does not mean that they have to put all this additional soundproofing in it. Building code does not require that. That's an added step or upgrade that you are choosing to do, but it's not required to meet building code. So I like to make that clear. But if you can do it and the ceiling's open, like, why wouldn't you add it? I think in my opinion, but it's not required even for new construction. So just like to point that one out. Dual zone furnace does not meet the code to legalize a suite in Calgary. It does not, I don't believe, right, Michael? Yeah, because that
no, it does if it's existing right now. Like, so if you have an existing suited property and you wanted to install a dual zone furnace, you could do that and it would still pass. But if it was new construction and you wanted to install a dual zone furnace, it does not, because a dual zone furnace still shares air. Like the cold air return to the furnace draws air from the main floor suite and the basement suite. They don't share the same heat ducts, but they both draw cold air from each unit back to the furnace, and that does not meet building code.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And Debbie says, isn't it just easier to buy new? This way everything's done for you. And yes, absolutely. I mean, the great thing about secondary suites is you can go, like I said, we do half and half. Like half the people want to improve a property, like Michael's strategy where he wanted to put some forced appreciation to the property and do some work. That is not for everybody, and you're a contractor, so it's a lot more attainable for you. But absolutely, you can hire a contractor like Michael, or you can go brand new and not kind of worry about any of this. You do still, if you want the soundproofing, need to add that as an additional, just because it's brand new does not mean that's in there. So just to kind point that out.
So I've done that. Like, so my strategy right now as an investor, this is separate from, say, myself as a contractor. Like, my investment properties are built by home builders. And then I purchase the property with the idea of suiting it after I take possession. So there's some things that we could do pre-construction, knowing that we're going to suite the property. And so, like, we could ask them to put in the side entrance already. Some of the things that are going to, add cost if we do it after the fact. We do rough-ins in the basement so that we've got in-suite laundry. We know where the kitchen sink's going to go. We have rough-in for the basement bathroom. And so then when we take possession, we suite the property, and then we put tenants in. And the great thing is like, we can put in a tenant while we're suiting the property, and we can give incentive to the main floor tenant to take possession while we're still doing construction in the basement, because they're going to have to live through the idea of the fact that they're going to, for the next 3 months, they're going to be kind of living in a house that's still in construction phase. And often they still have a dirt property. Like, we have to do landscaping, we've got to build a fence, and maybe the driveway isn't in yet. So all of that happens. So I say, for the first 3 months, instead of rent being $1,900 utilities included, it's going to be $1,700 utilities included, and they're excited about that. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to save $200 a month, and I get to move in right away, and all I have to do is deal with a little bit of noise between 8 and 4:30.
Yeah, 100%. I love that idea as well, because you're kind of combining both of them together. But there's pros and cons to all of these strategies. And the downside of new construction, like you said, is that initial phase of landscaping and getting it ready and stuff. There is still things that need to be done, most likely, depending on where and where and what. Robin said, new build suite of properties are so expensive. So this is an interesting one. So right now, today, if you buy a resale property and just can get it legalized to fire code, then you can definitely get into something cheaper. But next year, you're going to buy a house that has an illegal suite or no suite. You're going to add a new suite. You're going to come out around the same price. Now, that's where the challenge comes with the price point. Is if you buy a house for $400 or $425, and you need to put in a new basement suite to building code, and you're starting from scratch, you're going to end up spending close to that amount. So that's where a lot of people run into trouble with the price point. Going to semi-detached with a illegal suite on the resale market is a really good way to bring those numbers down, and the rents are still really great.
So just to answer Archer, is that a suite, single bedroom, if you're looking at, it's really subjective. You want to kind of pick your area, but if you're talking about like new construction, suited property, and you want to have a solid tenant profile, so business professional in the suburb, I think you're probably spending $70,000 to have a contractor do it, is kind of your average. And it really depends on the square footage. So average square footage for a one bedroom basement suite is around 600 square feet. And it depends on mechanical room location and what. I personally like to purchase properties where the mechanical room is accessible without going into the tenant's space. So I'm pretty selective with the model that I choose, so that one, as the property manager, I don't hire a property manager, I manage properties myself. I want to access the mechanical room without having to make a request to enter a tenant space. You can still do that. If you get the property at a great price, I'd say go for it. But if you're building from scratch, try to pick a model where like you could you could set it up so that you can enter through the side entrance, which would be like a common area, and you can access the mechanical room, and you can change the furnace filter. You can service the furnace if it dies at 10 o'clock at night, and you don't have to request to enter a unit. You can swap out a hot water tank. So kind of like the guts of the house, you can kind of go in, you can come and leave as you please, which is kind of my strategy there. So I'm thinking like average price is around 70. Could you do it? Could you hire a contractor and do it for 60? Sure. 50 maybe, but you'd be really skimping on finishes. You might regret putting that flooring in. You may regret picking the cheapest furnace you could possibly buy. So, that I think that's where that would come into play when you're really talking about, trying to keep the cost of the project down.
100%. You always get what you pay for. There's no way around that. Drew, so Drew wrote, tenants aren't required to swap out the furnace filters themselves. So I have 2 comments on that. So yes, on my leases and our property management division's lease, it does require the tenant to swap out the filter. However, as a landlord, if you're like, hey, I want to come check the furnace and like swap out the filter and like check the smoke alarms and stuff, right? You're supposed to be checking on the property anyway. It's a good reason to get in the house and just, see what's going on. But do you agree? Is that what you were thinking?
Totally. That's why I do it. I'm there. We even do lawn maintenance because I want to be there. I want to see what's going on. I want to make sure like they're not hoarders, and I want to make sure they're taking care of the property. Like there isn't any damage going on. I want to be there. Like this is a huge investment, and so and I'm really relying on this investment being valuable when I retire. And so I don't want the house to fall apart. Like, how valuable is it going to be if the tenants aren't taking care of it? And so I want to be there. I want to be able to go inside. I want to be able to take a look at it. I want to be, without being creepy and without being there too often that the people feel like, I'm invading their privacy. So, that just really gives me an opportunity to be able to interact. And then plus, I really feel like if I'm there for my tenant or my client, I call them, then they feel like they're being taken care of because they're taking care of my investment and making sure that it's not falling apart. And so like what I tell, my tenants is if there's ever anything that's loose, wiggly, leaky, I want to hear about it right away. And I'm going to be there as soon as I possibly can, because I don't want that one little thing that's dripping turning into like a huge a liability. And so, I'm there a lot, and I don't, I know that a lot of people are like, well, like they can change the furnace filter, they can cut the grass, they can change the light bulbs, they can, maybe changing light bulbs is extreme, but I like to be there. I want to see what's going on inside.
Yeah, it's again, there's no necessarily wrong way. This is just a reason some investors or landlords want to be doing that themselves. So it's up to you how you want to run your properties. Most people do every 6 months, they do like an inspection or walkthrough and property management companies. So that is usually included in their services and is reasonable. If you're going once a month to walk through a tenant's space, they're not going to like that. But within reason, and also obviously care when something is wrong, like Michael said, goes a long way. So and those small things become big things. It just happened at my house. We were away for a weekend. My nephew stayed here and my tap was leaking under my sink, and because he probably only washed dishes once while I was away, when I got home, my basement ceiling was wet, and he didn't he just didn't notice, or and a tiny little thing I would have caught right away is now a bigger problem. And so catching those small things right away, super important. So it's going to cost me a lot more than it should have, but that's life. So getting those things quick is important. Yes, Arthur.
I probably have one more thing to add, and I would say that like new build versus existing property. So new build communities, they, you know, are they more expensive than established neighborhoods? And, you know, is that a more expensive investment? I think like if it's already suited in an established neighborhood, then no, you can take advantage of this amnesty period right now, and you can meet fire code, and you can buy a property in an established neighborhood that has a suited property. You just need to bring it up to fire code, and it's legit. And you're probably going to have to you're gonna have to invest less. Now, if you're going to purchase a property in an established neighborhood that isn't suited, and you're going to suite it from scratch, then I think you're actually going to probably spend the same amount, if not more, in an established neighborhood than you would in a new community, in a new build, because you know, I think people are willing to spend a little bit more in an established neighborhood because they want to have like mature trees, and they don't want to live in construction and all this kind of stuff. So I find often you get a bit more bang for your buck as far as the property purchase. You're going to get more square footage in a new development than you would in an established for the same price. And you're probably going to spend the same amount on the suite, whether it's in a new development or an established one.
I agree entirely. Yeah.
And you may not get any less for rent in a new development. In fact, for myself, all of my properties are in Cochrane, and I get the same amount for rent as people that are renting in Calgary.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. So Michael, this is a great question. So now, if you are hiring a property manager, of course, you'll need to pay a 10% fee. So in the example we saw today, they those numbers are a little different because they were self-managing. But if you are, you know, paying a property manager, which property managers in Calgary tend to charge 10% of the gross rent per month. So let's just say you have a 3,000 gross rent per month, then your property management expense is 300 a month. And in the, you know, idea that we're putting 20% down and 30 years amortization and hiring a property manager, you should still be able, if that 20% is cash, not from a line of credit, if it's cash, then you should still be able to be sitting in that, you know, $400 to $500 range of cash flow. If you are taking advantage of kind of secondary suites in their best way, by putting, you know, like if it's 2 bedrooms up and 1 down, those don't cash flow as well. But if you have 5 bedrooms total, then they will cash flow better than the 3 bedrooms. So we want to maximize that, but it just depends a little bit where your obviously your down payment is coming from. If you have a line of credit that you're pulling the deposit from, then that expectation would definitely need to come down for sure. So I personally look for 600. Yeah. So 600 per month is excellent cash flow for here, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I property manage the properties myself. They're all new construction. You know, I've built them myself, probably spend on average $30,000 to build out the suite. I'm cash flowing around $500 to $600 a month, depending on you know, what happens that year, but typically it's around $500 to $600. If you're going to hire a contractor, obviously that's going to, you know, cut into that. If you're hiring a property manager, you know, your $500 to $600 is turning into $200 to $300 cash flow.
Depends where, for sure. We definitely have ones that you can cash flow in that, you know, 500 range with a property manager still. I have properties that cash flow that much with property management, but it varies, of course, on the properties, right? And where,
Totally.
And the one thing about cash flow too, for Calgary that's different, if you're not from Alberta, is you can squeeze extra cash flow out here a few different ways. One is pets. If you allow pets, you can charge a pet fee. So I always accept pets. I'm a pet lover, but my properties are set up for pets. And so I will charge a pet fee every month to squeeze out more cash flow. And then also garages are a great source to just have a higher rental income versus a property that doesn't have a garage. So in Calgary in particular, those work really well. Yeah, good cash flow, strategic rounds, totally think yeah, Nadia, the dust in new developments, that's definitely a con of a new build area for sure, is the dust. There's no way around that, unfortunately. And that's the trade-off, right? New construction versus resale. It's like the pros of an established community are definitely there, but the pros of the new construction, like people are very excited to move into a brand new property. I find it's no different than a homeowner like buying their first place, right? It's exciting, and Calgarians in particular, we're very much a driving city, and being out in the suburbs is not a big deal to most folks willing to live out in these suburbs. So it works quite well here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd also add that, like, you buy new construction, you could probably almost eliminate your cost of repair for the first, I don't know, I haven't put any money in repairing any of the new build stuff, and my first property was 7 years ago, so I haven't had to put any money in for the first 7 years now.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit. So it's a little bit more predictable, right?
Yeah.
You're not kind of worried about what's next going to break. Like,
and construction methods today are much better than they were 30 years ago.
For sure. Depends how big your company is. You could have in-house property management company. Like, do you mean for your own properties, Arthur? Yeah. I mean, you could, if you have enough properties, and you could just hire a property manager to run your portfolio for you. A lot of people in this group, I think, either self-manage or would be hiring a property manager. With less activity this summer, maybe a better opportunity to find homes needing rentals and buying at a lower cost. Yeah, I do think this summer there's going to be an opportunity for sure. Well, I say that every summer, but I think this summer even more so, just seeing even the initial indications of what summer is going to look like. I think it's a great opportunity for those that want to get out there and get to work and pound the pavement and find some deals. I think it's 100% a great time. So I don't want to go too much longer. It's 7:30 already, but if there's more questions, throw them in the chat. We want to get them answered. And then we're going to play our quick Kahoot game to give everyone your prizes. And then we can just open it up. And if you guys want to chat and stuff, we can do that. So.
Yes, the new home warranty does cover a lot of the deficiencies. Yeah. It really depends on what the issue is. So there's like a 10, 5, and 2. So 10 years on structural, 5 years on building envelope, and 2 years on finishes. So it really depends on what the issue is. Typically structural doesn't happen. It's quite rare. So you're covered for a couple of years on interior, and most new home builders don't want you to make a claim because it makes it very difficult for them to continue to pay for new home warranty coverage. And you can extend coverage by paying more for that, which can be a good option as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's another benefit of the new builds for sure, the new home warranty programs. If you're not in Alberta, or if you're in Ontario, I know there's a bunch of folks from Ontario. It's similar to the Tarion program, but it's our Alberta program. There was a comment I just missed. Archer's thinking about starting our own property management company. Okay, well, we'll have to talk about that on another session. So my brokerage does have a property management division, but it's not my company. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about that. You never know. And the cost of building materials is certainly, we didn't talk about that, but do you want to touch on that, Michael?
Sure. I could probably just quickly say yeah. Right now, lumber is double, sheet goods are triple, and supply is really low. It's a challenge, you know, just building in general. If you are a large builder, you've got some leverage to be able to be the first to get materials. If you're trying to do an infill, you're struggling, and so that's definitely difficult. If you're developing a basement, I mean, yeah, sure, there's 2x4s available. You can finish your basement. That's not a problem. So we're just doing a secondary suite right now. I spent $1,000 on lumber to frame the basement, and this time last year it would have cost me $500. So yeah, you're spending double right now to frame a basement because of building material costs. And I have heard that the prices are falling, and it's just that they're falling at the mill, but lumber yards are still sitting on old inventory or pre-purchased inventory, so they're still selling at the price in which they purchased it, and you'll probably see prices coming down by the end of the summer on lumber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. That's great advice. Debbie, that's a good question. Downsides to secondary suites. The downsides can be around, well, there's a few I could think of. One is just tenant management. You're like managing two different lifestyles, potentially schedules in one property. I really try to like line up people as best I can, but beyond that, I'm not getting that involved. I'm not, you know, handling every little thing that's maybe annoying someone. At the end of the day, they knew they're moving into a property with another suite, so there is going to be some noise. The one thing I really encourage our clients to do as a realtor when we're looking for properties is to figure out the laundry situation. Shared laundry is not ideal. So like for me, for my properties, it's like a must. They have to have separate laundry, but some landlords do shared laundry. But from what I have heard and experienced, that's a big cause for arguments. And so just doing what you can with the property to make them self-sufficient and as little you know, crossover in common areas as possible. And then the only like kind of last thing because I would maybe add as like a con is depending what your plan is for exit or resale. If you're going to the resale market and your house is only suitable for a real estate investor, then a real estate investor can only pay so much for your property down the road. And so you're maybe limited with what you want to do with the property upon exiting. But if you're in this as a long-term buy and hold investor, then, you know, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, that's not as much of a consideration. But if it's a short kind of sale, then I would be a little bit more concerned about that.
I might just add that like a downside, one of the primary downsides that I find when I'm interviewing potential tenants that are looking for a single family detached is that they need the space, the storage space. So if you're a family, you know, husband and wife, 2 kids, and you're looking at a 3-bedroom, is where are we going to put all our stuff because we don't have a basement? And so, you know, you're hoping that the place has a garage. If it only has a parking pad, then as the investor, I've put a shed in the backyard just to make that more attractive. But I find that storage is potentially an issue. But for those people that are on a tight budget that still need 3-bedroom, they figure it out and make it work.
Yeah, 100%. Robin, that's a good question. How do you deal with backyards for 2 suites? So you don't have to like, you know, fence it off separately and have your like private backyard space. Now, if you can somehow designate a separate area for them, especially if it's like a, you know, larger inner city lot or something, then you could separate it. But on like your permit to get a legal secondary suite, there is a designated amenity space calculation that's required by the city to be designated like for the basement suite, but it doesn't need to be fenced off and like separated. But the more you can do to keep your tenants happy, the better, I guess. But a shared yard like is very common. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. Ian says front, back, side yard separation. Yeah, I mean, if you can do that, then and have that like designated space, then awesome. Like that's really great if people have dogs and kids. Yeah, if your property's in high demand, you can choose tenants that don't require yards. Yeah. There you go. Get the bachelor in the basement who just, you know, comes and sleeps and then he's gone again. So they don't need the yard as much as maybe the family upstairs or dogs or whatever. So, okay, I am going to kind of wrap this part up here. Michael, I appreciate you very much. I hope everyone found that super helpful. I think Michael provided some great insights here. And if you want to reach Michael, maybe put your information in the chat there.
I'll add it in the chat. You can contact me anytime, anybody, if they've got any questions, if they just have some, if they have a property that they're interested in. I'd say, hey, reach out. If you're looking at something that you think might be good potential, then I'm willing to come and take a look pre-purchase. And we could also just have a conversation over the phone. If you're interested in knowing what things might cost, then you know, please just give me a call, and I'm willing to talk, share.
Great, that's a great resource. You might be bombarded. We're offering your assistance and help. Sure. We really appreciate it. Oh, the one pro I forgot to mention about secondary suites. This is a huge one.
Smelling me.
The financing. So if you're like just kind of below the price point you're hoping for potentially on your financing, the bank will, depending on the lender, will use a rental offset on your pre-approval amount for a property that has a legal suite. If the suite is not legal, then they will not take an offset for the basement suite. They'll just look at the whole house and use a conservative rental rate. So it can help you qualify for more. And also having a great cash flowing property helps you qualify for more properties. When you are sitting with a few negative cash flowing, you know, deals and in your portfolio, that does not show to the bank that this is a business that's making money. And so even if you're a residential investor, that is still something that they want to see. They want to look at your properties and see how they're operating. So run it like a business, and we want to see positive cash flow on those properties. So I will wrap that up there. Okay, so that's kind of the end of, you know, what we had planned for this evening. It always goes so fast. But if, you know, if you guys want to chat or ask any questions, feel free to, you know, turn your camera on or whatever. I can turn the recording off if you like. I'm probably good with turning that off now. We'll wrap up the kind of formal part of the event here, and hope everyone enjoyed it. So I'll turn off the recording now.